Welcome to this week's edition of Career Connect. I cannot wait to get into this episode because I have two crackers here waiting to have a discussion. My old friend Andy, who's the CEO of For Good, and Ramona, who's the CEO of Mimi Women. So, who wants to go first? Should we go ladies first?
Always.
Ramona, tell us about what you're up to.
So Mimi Women was previously known as Happy Days. Started as my honors thesis in 2009. I wrote, based on media and the pressure that I had, I created an insight into that I don't really need to be a size 0 and have a tiny body, because I am 1.8 meters. And I think I found my own freedom in that. And after 7 years in South African media, I resigned and I created a non-profit that was making profit, so I had to make profit. And we were known as Happy Days for 3 years, and now we're a social enterprise that does CSI, creates jobs, empowers women economically, and creates affordable sanitation in Africa and beyond.
Wow. So we're going to get into that much more deeply soon. Andy, tell us what you're up to.
So for good, your viewers can hop onto www.forgood.co.za and have a look. We are the largest volunteering matching portal in the country. So we basically connect people to causes. One particularly funny journalist once called us online dating for charities and volunteers. Also a social enterprise, which is particularly interesting. You know, we're a good new fashion tech startup. And the product behind the scenes of what you see on the site, which is accessible to all South Africans and all non-profits, is we actually sell a tool into corporate South Africa, currently being used by 10 large corporates, 8 of them publicly listed, that helps them run their employee volunteering programs by connecting their employees to causes, like we connect South Africans to causes.
That's amazing. So, the whole idea of today's episode is, can businesses stand for good? Do businesses have a future if they don't do good? How much good should a company do? And I think pure capitalist companies for profit, they get a lot of bad rap in the press. So if you look politically, companies are being pressurized to continuously do more, and I think that's great. They're seen as pure evil, that they're there just to make money and they're not doing any good to society, they're not creating enough jobs. And on the other side, you have the non-profit world that often means well, but just can't get going. So I think it's a fascinating discussion around social enterprise. And we were speaking about it earlier on, is let's start first. How do you define it?
So everyone defines it differently. So I like to kind of hook onto my definition of it. And I say that there is a continuum. So on the one side, you have pure charity, and in a lot of ways, it's broken. It's over-reliant on donor funding. It's largely inefficient. It's made up of extremely amazing, passionate people that aren't necessarily business builders. It's provided symptomatic relief, and probably crucial symptomatic relief to our country. But other than that, it's hobbling along at the moment. On the other side of the continuum, you've got pure capitalism. And in some ways, they are evil, because they've created a lot of the problems that the poor charities over here are trying to solve. In the middle, theoretically, is where I put social enterprises. So companies that can be run like a business, can generate revenue like a business, can declare dividends like a business, perhaps giving up a few multiples, but still solve social impact problems. This idea that you can't make money and save the world at the same time, as egotistical as that might be, I think is old-fashioned.
So would the term conscious capitalism cover it?
In some ways. You can call it what you want. The problem on the pure capitalistic side of the equation is that if you are beholden to shareholders will always want returns over everything else. It's why the CSI space is so funny at the moment, because there is this guideline that you're meant to spend 1% net profit after tax on CSI activity. And that's getting squeezed as hard as possible by a lot of companies. You know, thankfully we work with some really innovative and forward-thinking ones. But when the economy is down, the first budget to go is CSI.
Yeah. So Ramona, I often see in our research is that young people today, we call them Afrillennials, they're constantly looking for a job or a career that they have a sense of purpose. And so I'm fascinated to hear, does that ring true for you? And two, what we see is we often have, like the tussle that you have with CSI, often when they get into a job, they're happy for the company to do all of that and they don't do it themselves. So I think you're both really qualified to answer this, but I'm interested in your context first.
I think it's completely true. Unemployment sits at 29% currently, and 62% of the country lives on 33,500 rand. And that's for me as a farm girl from rural KZN, it's a huge issue because I grew up with the people, so I know exactly what's going on. But my issue with what you've just said is that companies are very quick to say you need this, this, and this, and a company like For Good is amazing because you need that voluntary aspect of it to give you the credibility that will give you the push to know what you want to do, and that needs to happen. But the one thing that combats that is entitlement, and that's something I can't fix. For me, our business started as a non-profit. It moved to an incubator. We're the only woman-run incubator in the country, backed by JSE listed companies, and it's teaching financial literacy. Again, coming back to how do I make what I have multiply by 10? And my vision as a businesswoman and as a social activist and a survivor of abuse was to bring all of these things together in one big pink circle and say, we got you, this is how we do it. There's hard days, there's good days, but I think for me, why I bring people on the business and I pay them or I don't, is people need to understand that life is hard and the struggle is real. And there's no such thing as an Instagram life that's going to keep me going. Whatever we all have has been worked hard for. And that's what I'm fighting for currently in this voluntary space. But it's always, what are you going to pay me, minimum wage, this and that? And I'm like, oh no, please.
That's the problem though, isn't it? Like everyone knows one person that has an Instagram life.
And then you sit there and you're like, oh, but then we went for a business meeting and I had to pick up the bill. And I'm a social enterprise, but you're the capitalist person with all these income streams. And that's what I think for me and what we stand up for, especially to women, is it's no secret. I mean, I have a brand that mentors you from 11 until 45, if you really look at it. We give you pads from the beginning as a CSI company. We then bring you in 18 to 35. We teach you how to be an entrepreneur or a businesswoman or direct selling agent or a brand ambassador with a 34% commission on it, selling it in various communities. But at the same time, we're teaching you to become self-reliant. So you're not into ideas of abuse, into cycles of poverty. You're not into the blesser phenomenon. You're keeping, and like I said, shyly and as much as you're keeping your knees together and you're keeping your books open and you're acquiring the things that you need to do. And my problem with the Instagram life is that, you know, the truth is you're not paying for that champagne as a girl on Instagram. Some man is paying it and he's got 10 others that are paying it. And some brand is paying it. That's why Andy.
So Andy, have you come across the same kind of entitlement?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to chip in on that. It's such a tough word, and I almost feel unqualified to comment on millennials. You know, a good colleague of mine once said, people are they're spending too much time asking who the millennials are and not why they are. This idea of purpose, I think, is a much more positive way to look at things. You know, you can always look at the negative side of things, but I think millennials have created more high growth companies than any generation ever in less time. So there is something special about this generation. They've also been born into probably the toughest economic situation of all time. So this idea of purpose as opposed to entitlement is fascinating to me. And Deloitte has had a millennial study that gets released every year now for the last 3 years, I think. Latest one's just come out. And latest one, interestingly enough, has some insights onto how tough the world has become. But all of them talk about this idea that purpose is now being put alongside profit, whereas our generation was much more about climbing the ladder and getting to profit. And I think the space that we're both playing in has this ability to unlock purpose if we can get past this idea that for the very first interaction you have, whether it be with a social enterprise or a charity, it has to be paid for. And I know that's tough, because when you can't afford the taxi fare to get to the charity, well, how on earth can you volunteer? But somewhere we've got to find that balancing ground, because charities don't have enough money to pay for volunteers, but they have enormous opportunities for skills development. That's kind of where we're playing at the moment.
I think that's it's just something for me, because I'm constantly in the grassroots part of the country. Is the reason I forced the business pivot strategy to go into economic freedom was with me in nonprofit, and Andy, I don't know if this is familiar to you, but I found myself in chronic depression with all the stuff that I was facing. Because you're not just giving out pads anymore, you're becoming someone's mother. You're required to step in and help a rape victim, and it just got too much. I spent the most of 3 months last year on medication because I couldn't cope with my life anymore. And that's when my mentor was like, pivot. Entrepreneurship is tough, but you've paid the lessons. Go make profit, do good, and this is what social entrepreneurship is about. And I finally, after struggling for a long time, made peace with that. And
wow. So you've made peace. And after the break, we're going to go into more detail about what that peace looks like, because I think what we see with a lot of young people, they want to come into the world, whether it's as a volunteer or as an employee, to come in with this work-life balance. And that's a fascinating topic that we could look at afterwards too. So we'll be back after the break. Welcome back. The second half is going to be even more action-packed than the first half. If anything's to go by, I want to find out from you. There is a massive problem in this country where probably over half of our youth, our general youth population, are unemployed. Some people say even a majority of that are unemployable. Should they be looking at volunteering?
Of course, and it's in a particular way. So I think, as I've grown up, I've learned that different businesses solve different problems, and what I can't solve at the moment with For Good is the kind of direct employment problem. But what I can solve, and we're running a massive campaign at the moment, which is targeting the difference between formal education and the workplace, because there's a huge gap. You felt it, I felt it, you felt it. You come out of varsity, if you were lucky enough to go, you come out of high school, and suddenly you enter the workplace, and it is a scary, scary place. So how do you bridge that gap? And that's what we're doing. We're saying you can come and volunteer short term, unpaid, it's not a job, at a charity, and do the skills that you learnt at varsity. If you qualified as an accountant, come sort out a charity's books. If you're a marketer, set up a Facebook page, write a fundraising strategy, set up an Instagram profile, create content. If you are an HR or a legal person, come in, do contracts. If you are a psychologist, mentor kids.
So you're basically saying this is a great way to get skills, so to get expertise at what you've studied and experience. At the same time, you've got something to put on your CV that would actually make you attractive for your next step, and might even open doors. Ramona, do you have a similar experience with volunteers in your system?
I don't, because I'm backed by the government, I don't really, I have volunteers that help us on activations and roadshows, but it's not continuum on that level. And because I have a complete arm of the business that's based on empowerment with 18 to 35 and indirect jobs, I don't get that sort of volunteer stream. But now that I've met Andy, I will be getting it on Monday. So that's been cool. But what I have noticed is, for me exactly, I completely agree with Andy's statement, is that I often see when I place somebody, especially as a startup with constraints and budgets and all of these things, you must know you're chasing this big vision and this big dream, and you assume that, you know, people who are younger want to learn more, and there's so much, there's a lot of wisdom that you can give or your team can give, and I have a great team. But what I notice is if we've placed somebody, it's only after 2 weeks that you realize that the CV said one thing and that there's no. And that for me is very frustrating as a business owner. It's frustrating for me. I mean, on a corporate level, there's people that back you, but I feel bad because in a corner office of like 10 people, you can see exactly the accountability and responsibility. And something like Andy's,
Even more so in a startup environment.
even more so in a startup.
No
And
dead weight.
and the thing I have about that that's fairly interesting with the National Development Plan, especially in South Africa, the one thing that's going to rescue the economy is entrepreneurship and SMME stabilization. So how is that really going to happen? Because I'm a 30-year-old businesswoman. I'm trying to make this happen. I'm trying to get the youth involved and employ them and pay them and do this and pay for everything. But the issue I'm having to get them to go to a voluntary side of it, or even get graduates that have the skill set compared to what the CV is saying, is costing me more money.
So what is the experience? What is the pushback you're getting?
I get a lot of, so just to give you an example of my current situation, in the last year, I've had 3 different communication interns. I don't fire anybody, but I do give contracts based on 3 months, 6 months, and permanent. But because when you start, you promise me the earth and you promise me the ocean, and kids and students need to know this, hey? You don't overpromise and underdeliver because you get a bad reputation. With me, it's a very simple role. There's your job. It's 2 pages. It's completely vetted by our HR people and everything. All you have to do is manage stakeholders, do social media, and get your side of the work done. That's it, 3 layers. And I constantly find people just don't want to do that. They just want to sit on the internet and do nothing.
Do you think it's a sense of, they give that sense of, I'm bored, I want work that challenges me? Do you think they're adequately prepared? Do you think they need their hand held? What's your opinion?
I think they need their handheld. I mean, let's be fair, I needed my handheld. I probably put myself in a lot more risky positions. You probably did as well. And we learned through continual mistakes and bashing our heads against walls.
I don't, sorry, I just want to interject there. I don't agree. I think it's basically from what I see, especially in the 18 to 35 market that I employ, especially women, that I've seen come through the office and my friends as entrepreneurs. It's I know I'm bound to a contract, and it's a very corporate culture. That salary is coming on the 25th of the month. And if I do 20% of my KPAs, or if I do 40% of it, my salary is still coming. There's no way they're going to give me 40% of it. As an entrepreneur, you know that if I do 40% of my work, there's 40% of my money coming in. The other 60, where's it going to come from?
So you need some better performance management.
There's enough, but it's just, that's what I feel on my side. And that's the remuneration part of it. But I really struggle. And I'm not speaking on behalf of myself. There's a great amount of my friends where we all sit and it's the same issue. It's staff labor and the motivation aspect of...
So the trick is filtering. I've noticed 2 really interesting trends. So one, if you look on LinkedIn now, which is obviously your first go-to place when you're hiring someone, you go Google them. LinkedIn now has a dedicated section for volunteering. It's on that profile, is right there. And then this trend, and you speak to entrepreneurs who are hiring, who are going through exactly the same problem that you are. So I'm not saying the problem doesn't exist. When faced with 2 equal candidates, both promising them the world, the one with volunteering experience is usually a safer bet. Because volunteering requires a bit of hustle. It requires finding the taxi fare to get there, finding a charity that you can work with, actually arriving, delivering something. And committing, even if it's over a short term, it's at least that point. And you can pick up the phone that charity and go, oh, listen, do you remember this person? If that charity remembers that person, that's a very, very good filter for talent.
I think the one thing I noticed last night when I had a team meeting, my second in charge and I were sitting down. We've been together for the last 3 years, and we traveled together. We've seen everything on this business. Also a township girl. We both grew up rural KZN, township KZN, 10 kilometers away from each other, and we met at Vega. So Pumzile is the first black graphic designer who was part of Beiersdorf and everything. Phenomenal woman. Everything that you see with Mimi is designed by her creative direction. And there's these two chicks that everyone laughed at, and we actually took on the global corporates and we became something. But she said something so great, and she also gets frustrated because she manages stuff as well. And she's like, I think what I've learned is we were a different generation of kids, and not everyone is like us. We're just different. You know, we can do 20 things, and the frustration comes to, and she was talking about a motivational speaker whose name is Andy something, where when you pick up something, you expect it to work because that's your mentality, but it's not working the same way for others.
So there's new research come out on Afrilenials, and the interesting aspect is, and we'll talk about the deeper reason behind this, but what they're really asking for in a work relationship is a parental relationship, either parental relationship that they have had or wish they had. So now, what does that mean for either corporates or entrepreneurs that are always on the go, and now you've got this huge workforce of kids?
You know, it's dangerous times. I mean, you know, as like why you got so into that statement is that entrepreneurs don't always have the time to be a parent.
No, we don't. You don't even have the time.
And corporates won't put in the time often. Outside of 1-2 weeks of good what do they call it, intake, orientation. That's it. So 1 to 2 weeks of good orientation. Then unless you have got a senior manager inside that corporate who really backs you and cares, and of course they do exist, you're going to have to fend for yourself, like our generation fended for ourselves. And that, I hate to make this a generational thing, because one generation is definitely not better than the others. You know, we say the same crazy things about our parents that our parents said about their parents, and so on it goes. But whether this generation needs more support or not, they are certainly so empowered in how they use technology, how they use social media, the fact that they have the world at their fingertips, all they need to do is translate that into a bit of work confidence.
I think they actually, it's not even that. I think they just need discipline. I think our generation, or my generation, I don't know which generation I'm actually in right now, but I'm just saying, for me, I worked very hard my whole life. I know that my parents worked on a reward system. Nothing came easy. Even now, if I want to do something that costs me 500 Rand, I have to ask myself 10 times, because I didn't have it. And what I noticed with this generation, especially with my younger cousins and my nieces and nephews, there's this attitude of I'm expected to give it to you. And that's the problem, where I say discipline is the key to this. It's about commitment, discipline, coming to a job, volunteering for free, not getting anything out of it on that level.
What are you going to do for me?
What's in it for me?
So what about this theory that all of this stems from a real lack of self-belief? So behind this arrogance, behind this entitlement, behind all of this is really a lot of fear and a deep-rooted lack of self-belief, and the opposite behavior comes out, and they're crying for this nurturance in the workplace or the organization. Do you connect with that?
That famous Wait But Why article that says the millennials enter the world and they think everything is unicorns and fluffy rainbows, and the difference between expectation and reality is so big. You know, we came into the world thinking, oh no, this is going to be hard. They come into the world with all the power of technology at their fingertips, thinking it's rainbows and unicorns, and then that difference is what pulls them back to earth.
But it's also that with that whole unicorn rainbow theory, is that what I've noticed, and I think for me, not retired, in between media, and it took me a long time to step out of that fame, to detach from complete simplicity and live the life that I lead now. you know, to wear Chuck Taylors and to rock no makeup and show up at a school where I could be hijacked, I could be raped, I could be anything, give the reassurance and pray that we're okay and take my team of women out. That was a different lifestyle compared to when there's hair, makeup, artists, stylists, people taking pictures of you. And it's a completely different shift, but I was so empty in that world that in this world I'm completely fulfilled. And for me, I know who I am. That's why when I see this generation struggle with, are they looking at me? Are they seeing me? I see it with kids. I mean, my little cousins have more Instagram followers than I do. One picture gets 400 likes. I'm still struggling at 69.
But 69? Geez.
But it's just...
Like if I get 5.
But that's what my thing is. It's not about... I just feel this generation is, you know, I'm conscious and I'm conscious in my spiritual realm. They're conscious on the fame and fortune, and they've kind of missed 10 steps to get there. They're living that life.
So it's fascinating what you're saying, and I think this is what rings true, is the road to purpose is filled with challenges.
Yes.
Most of those challenges are you challenging your own self-beliefs, challenging yourself, and not waiting for the role to challenge you. I found this a really interesting discussion, and I hope that we can connect in the future, and I want to wish you both the best of luck. You're both doing amazing things. Thank you.